Hello there. Good morning. This is Brian Hitzelberger, and this is your first discussion for AD 255 Art Appreciation Online. The title of this discussion is Shifts Over Time. And what this discussion is really about is looking at the idea that works of art are actually not fixed objects in terms of how they are used or interpreted or even seen by audiences. When an artist creates a work of art, they make a series of decisions and they make some kind of object. The form, the media, any of that is entirely dependent on what the artist used or what their background is or what their material choices were. But that artwork also has some kind of purpose. In the first chapters in your book, the readings from this week describe these purposes in detail. They talk about purposes of spiritual sustenance, purposes of day-to-day living, purposes of cultural expression, etc. So an artist makes a work with a certain purpose in mind, and that piece can actually serve that function to one audience, but it may not serve that function to all audiences. The work, it's the same object, but depending on who is looking at it and what their cultural background is, what their interest in the work is, it can actually come to mean something quite different. And this is one way of thinking about artworks is actually not static things. They are static objects. They are unchanging over time, in a physical sense. But what they mean and how they are seen, that is actually changed over time because art stays the same, but of course we don't. We change. So for your discussion this week, I would like you to actually think back in your life as a person who has looked at things and think about a work of art that you've seen that maybe has come to mean something quite different for you than it did for the person who made it. And this could be a photograph, it could be a film, it could be a building, it could be an article of clothing, a piece of jewelry, doesn't matter. I really just want you to actually think about how your own life, your own perceptions, and your own interests directly inform how you read a work of art. So I'm going to use myself as an example. I am a big fan of Fra Angelico, who was a Dominican monk, but also a proto-Renaissance painter. So he was working at like the earliest time of the Renaissance. He was a very religious man. He was a Christian man. He was he was a Dominican monk, and one of the things that he did while he was alive is that he actually created a series of frescoes in a Dominican monastery in Florence, in Italy, called San Marco. One of those frescoes depicts the mocking of Christ. So here it is. This is a painting that was done on a wall of a monastery. It was done by a Dominican for other Dominicans. It was made by a Dominican monk for an audience of other Dominican monks. It's absolutely a work of spiritual sustenance. It depicts a scene from the Bible, and it depicts the moments when Christ was actually mocked by the people around him. Now, I am not a religious person, right? I am not somebody who ascribes to the same religious beliefs as either the artist who made this painting or the people that he made it for. I am an artist. I'm a painter. I see this piece and I start to pick it apart and actually kind of look at the types of colors that are used and the types of spatial relationships that exist between things. And for me, it becomes a work of cultural expression. It becomes a piece that was made by people from another culture that I am not a part of. I am not a Dominican monk. I am not living in the early Renaissance. And I see it as an outsider, as a way to see inside a culture that I'm not a part of. How did these people think about their lives? How did these people think about their beliefs? And how did that inform the types of pictures that they made about those beliefs, right? I find it very beautiful and interesting on a formal sense, but I also see it as a form of cultural expression because I'm an audience that exists outside of the audience that was initially intended. So that's what I'm talking about. So for this week, think back, and I know I picked a piece from art history, a very old work of art. It doesn't have to be an old work of art. It could be it could be a contemporary film. It could be a piece of clothing, anything that was made by somebody creatively. Discuss the purpose that it was initially made for, and discuss the purpose that you feel it has come to represent to you. And be sure and include the terminology from the chapter. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing your videos.